One of the things that I love about Section 78 in the Doctrine and Covenants is how it shows us that the Lord is in control, He knows what's going to happen to us, and He can give us comfort and direction to help us through hard times. One of the reasons why this comes across so clearly for me in Section 78 is because of some events that happened to Joseph after that section is given. So in that section, the Lord commands Joseph, Sidney Rigdon, and Newell K. Whitney to travel to Missouri from Ohio and counsel with the saints there who are trying to build up the city of Zion. But in the time between the giving of the revelation on March 1st and when Joseph and Sidney and Newell actually depart on April 1st, there's some tragedy that occurs in Joseph and Sidney's life. And this tragedy comes on the evening of March 25th and 26th of 1832. Joseph and Sidney were in Hiram working on their translation of the Bible, and Joseph and Emma and their two children, Julia Murdoch and Joseph Murdoch, were staying in the home of John and Elsa Johnson. That evening, a mob breaks into the house. They pull Joseph out of his bed, they drag him to a nearby field, they beat him, and they tar and feather him. And they do the same thing to Sidney Rigdon. They take Sidney from his home, they drag him out, they're dragging him across the frozen ground, and his head's kind of hitting against the ground as he's going along, which leaves him with some serious head injuries. And so this attack is a pretty fearful thing for both Joseph and Sidney. The other thing that it does is that because the door was left open of the Johnson home, the cold night air comes in, and Joseph's infant son, Joseph Murdoch, who was 11 months old at the time and sick with the measles, worsens after this and dies just a couple of days later. But Joseph and Sidney know that they still need to fulfill the Lord's commandment. And so just about a week after this attack occurs, even though they're both still suffering physically, Joseph is suffering emotionally, they decide that they need to go to Missouri. And so they leave for Missouri, and Joseph doesn't get back to Ohio until later in June of 1832. And this must have been really difficult for Joseph and Emma. But Section 78 contains some verses in there that kind of foreshadowed that the Lord knew that Joseph was going to go through these hard times. It talks about how tribulation will come to the saints, but if they're true and if they stay faithful to God, that He will see them through all things and eventually crown them with eternal glory. And I think that must have been a great comfort to Joseph as he endured these things and tried to fulfill the Lord's commandment.